Before doing a deep dive into the huge pool of retro games I really want to cover, let's ease you into the premise with a collection of classic arcade games exclusively available on the Nintendo Switch, which is a popular modern video game console. You might have heard of it. Today we're going to talk about the games available on the 2022 release Taito Milestones. This is a compilation of 10 arcade classics from Taito, bundled into one package, available both physically and digitally on the Nintendo eShop. A lot of times you'll hear certain people in this particular subset of gamers say the phrase, "I don't pay for ROMs," and while I get it, I don't necessarily agree with it. I'm a firm believer that you should pay for your entertainment, and if I can give the current rights holders money for their old games, I'll gladly do so. At the very least, it signals that I would like more of this content made available. Now, if I can't give any rights holders money for their back catalog, I'll go the other route, no problem. But whatever, I'm not here to judge you, just these games. In the case of a release like this, I can see the point of the "I don't pay for ROMs" crowd a little more than usual. Taito has a rich history of arcade games, but you wouldn't necessarily know that looking at this release, other than realizing they're important enough to get their own compilation. The 10 games included are presented via a basic single-screen interface, and selecting one just launches the individual Arcade Archives version of the game that is also available a la carte on both Nintendo and Sony's digital storefronts. Aside from save states, a couple of display options, and the ability to change a few settings, there's nothing notable about this collection, and there is no historical perspective presented here to give you any kind of clue about why these games might be considered, milestones. Recent releases like Pac-Man Museum Plus, TMNT The Cowabunga Collection, and Atari 50 all have various perks to owning them, from archive materials, to new interviews and perspectives, to just cool ways to interact with old games. This, again, is just a single-screen launcher to play an old game ROM with some very minor options. Another frustrating thing about this particular release is that it's not the first time there's been a Taito compilation on home consoles, and this is certainly a downgrade. During the Xbox PS2 era, we were treated to a series called Taito Legends, each volume giving us 30 to 40 games, along with interviews with the creators and other archive materials. Along with that historical context, the games included seemed important. Space Invaders, for example, Taito's biggest game. Space Invaders isn't worthy of being a milestone? Come on! Taito Milestones is a $40 release, so $4 per game. These are normally priced at $7.99 each on the eShop, so already it's a bargain at half off. But you still might think $40 is too high. Now, I picked this up new on Amazon for about $11, so obviously my value per game here will be different than yours, but I'll put a link in the notes below so you can see if that fire sale price is still available. It seems to drop to around that price sometimes on the eShop too. It should be pointed out though that the best and arguably most well-known game here, 1983's Elevator Action, is exclusive to this collection and cannot be purchased as an individual download for the Switch for some reason. If you want to play arcade elevator action on your Switch, this is your only option. So let's get into it and go ahead and get elevator action out of the way. It's rad. I love elevator action. I love shooting these dudes, squashing them with elevators, or just jump kicking them in their stupid faces. I probably played more of it on the NES than in the arcades, but I still played this cabinet a lot. But nostalgia. So, elevator action is great and exclusive to this compilation on the Switch currently, but we're not going to go in depth here because nostalgia. It's great though, but no official recommendation. Disqualified. Also disqualified is 1981's Kicks, since it's a game I'm very familiar with and played a bunch back in the day. But honestly, I hadn't even thought about it in the last 30 years or so. This one came from Taito's American branch, which is novel, and is a simple yet addictive puzzle game of sorts, where you're trying to fill in a certain percentage of the screen with boxes before getting touched by the menacing kicks, or the sparks, or the fuse. Kicks is a great game with terrific sound, and seriously, this has some awesome arcade sound effects going on. But unfortunately, its legacy is being the game that starting in the early 90s was cloned into those things where you draw boxes on the screen to reveal naked anime ladies. Respect to the original though. Check it out if you're at all curious about the innocent beginnings of that whole naughty genre. Now for the unknowns. Space Seeker, also from 1981, is something I'd never even heard of until I looked at this box. It doesn't seem to have had legs either because it never received any home conversions of any kind, and arcade cabinets for it seem to be pretty rare these days. And if you'd like to try an interesting game without knowing anything about it at all, go ahead and skip to the next chapter and then add this one to your list. Don't listen to the details I'm about to give, just go play it and experience the joy of trying to figure it all out. I say that because this one is, well, it's unusual. You're this circle with 4 dots in it, and you move around this planet towards some other dots and some cannons which can kill you before you ever really get going in the game. There are also planets orbiting this planet, and if they touch you, it's a mild inconvenience for about a second and a half. If you touch the red dots, you're launched into a cockpit view shooter where you have to clear all the enemies. If you touch one of the cannons, you enter a side-scrolling Scramble-esque level where you have to also clear all the enemies. Complete all 6 sequences and you'll start again with increased difficulty. This honestly feels more like a computer game than an arcade game because it's so obtuse. Arcade games around this time really didn't require you to figure them out, not to the extent that Space Seeker does anyway. It demands a lot of experimentation to determine how to advance or even just how to get started. And it's quite unforgiving, so you'd probably be loading in dozens of quarters before you felt like you were even getting the hang of it. And I have a feeling that at the time, most players probably moved on from it and just took their coinage elsewhere, which is why it doesn't have much of a legacy. Alpine Ski from 1982 is another one where it was an arcade machine, and that's that. There were never any home ports of any kind. Here's how it was marketed to arcade owners, with a hot ski lady, and oh yeah, down here in the corner there's the product. Its biggest claim to fame is probably that it showed up in the Paper Chase guy's office in a random episode of Knight Rider. There were both upright and cocktail models for this cabinet, so if you didn't play this at your local Club Med, maybe you played it at your local Club Med Pizza Hut. You're a skier and you ski. Touch anything besides points or snow and you die. Rocks, trees, other skiers, some crazy drunken person on a snowplow, dead. There are 3 levels to cycle through before the difficulty increases. Skiing and not dying, slalom and not dying, and a bonus stage where you compete in a ski jump. Try to get as many points as you can. Standard stuff. When I was a kid, I pumped quarters into machines not because they were great games necessarily or because I was any good at them, but because I wanted to see all the levels. The Pie Factory level in Donkey Kong, for example. I like seeing everything a game has to offer, and sometimes with arcade games, just getting to see everything feels like a victory. Here you'll most likely be able to see everything in just a couple of play sessions, and so there's just not a lot that's compelling to go back to here. The only consideration I would make for playing this again would be putting together an extreme sports high-score tournament of some kind, with this being one of the challenges. But that's just me. I think themed arcade cabinet tournaments are a neat idea. Another 1982 release from Taito was Frontline, a precursor to games like Commando. But like many gaming precursors, it's plotting and will get improved on drastically in the years to come. Frontline featured a unique control scheme where you had a joystick, a fire button, and a chunky metal knob that you turn to aim your gun in one of 8 directions, or press in to lob a grenade at your enemies. Obviously you can't do that with any modern controllers, so in the case of this Arcade Archives release, the second analog stick acts as your aim, like a twin-stick shooter. It's not entirely successful. This particular version also has a second option where you just shoot in whichever direction you're moving, but I found that to be even more awkward. Frontline is interesting from a technical standpoint and is slightly more fun once tanks get involved, but the controls make everything tedious. The sound can get rather grating, and you're going to die a lot. I would just rather be playing Commando. Yet another game from 1982 is Wild Western, which uses the very same control setup as Frontline. You're a lawman trying to prevent train robberies. You can shoot the robbers directly or ricochet shots off the side of the train if you're a reckless madman. Get shot and you die. Touch literally anything and you die. Complete a level and you get an exciting bonus stage where your idiot horse flips a coin in the air for you to shoot. Since we are talking two games with the same control scheme, I'll go ahead and say that I prefer Wild Western to Frontline. I wouldn't want to play either of them, but at least Wild Western is slightly more interesting and it sounds way better. You even get a jaunty rendition of Ghost Riders in the Sky as you die over and over and over again. Now, fun fact, I called it Riders on the Storm on the live stream, which is wrong, that's a different song. However, it turns out that Ghost Riders in the Sky was the inspiration for Riders on the Storm, so I was kinda right. 1983's Chack'n Pop is very popular in Japan, but barely registered here in the States. Playing it now for the first time, I too failed to see its appeal. It's slow, clunky, the controls don't feel good, and nothing I was doing seemed like it ever clicked with my brain. Something about Miss Chack'n Pop being kidnapped by monsters and you have to rescue a heart from a jail cell to escape the level. The movement is janky and the way you dispatch enemies is awkward. The cutesy mascot you play as, though, has made cameo appearances in Taito games over the years, and a lot of these characters later appeared in the Bubble Bobble games. They love that little guy over there. The Fairyland Story from 1985 is the most adorable game in the bunch. You're a little witch lady riding around on your broom and sometimes on your blue dragon. You land in a level and turn the enemies there into cakes, which you can push off ledges onto other enemies. Orcs, wizards, ghosts, the Pope, which splits into 4 popes, all must be turned into delicious cakes. The Fairyland Story is easy to pick up and play, and is delightfully charming. Little Witch Girl can die in all sorts of cute ways, and the constant evolution of enemies is fascinating to watch unfold. I seriously lost it when the Bishop Pope thing suddenly became 4 Bishop Pope things. What a treat. With over 100 levels and a continue option, thankfully, you can play this one for quite a while. It seems like the kind of game that would have been right at home on one of the Game Boy handhelds, but nope, it never happened. Halley's Comet was made to capitalize on the Halley's Comet mania that was sweeping our planet back in 1986. It's a vertical shooter where you're tasked with saving all the planets from attacking comets. Survive 2 levels and the planet is saved before you fly off to the next one. You can save Venus, the Sun, even your boy Pluto. Remember Pluto? And there's an interesting mechanic where every enemy that gets past you contributes to an on-screen percentage. If that reaches 100%, the planet you're defending is destroyed and your game instantly ends. It's difficult, but I like the look of this and the background music is great. Shooter veterans will probably laugh at how simplistic this is, but I think it's a great starting point if you're interested in getting into this particular genre. Obviously it's not the first of its kind, with games like Xevious having been out since 1982, but dare I say, I think I enjoy this more than Xevious.
The Ninjawarriors.
The final game in this collection is 1987's The Ninjawarriors, which is from some of the creators of the Fairyland Story, and is exactly my kind of jam. It's a side-scrolling beat-em-up that featured a gimmick in arcades of using 3 screens instead of 1. This gives you an ultra-wide look at the admittedly limited playfield. Plot details are kind of all over the place, but basically, you're a robot ninja in human skin who has been sent on a mission to stop a fascist leader. You can either kill enemies with your knives or your ninja stars. There are no power-ups, no potions, no floor food. You have 1 life, 1 life bar, and your 2 weapons, one of which is in limited supply. It's designed to suck your quarters right out of you. The good news is that playing these games on free play means that you can just keep wailing on the continue button to see it through to the end, which will take you about 45 minutes to an hour. I realize that doesn't sound like much value, but these kinds of games are a blast, especially with a friend in co-op. But I'm not saying it's good because I like the genre, it's legit fun. The images are sharp and animate really well. The music is rad, and there's a real sense of wonder every time some new weird monster thing shows up and you're wondering how this new fascist president guy ever got elected in the first place. And boy, does it have an ending. It is really something.
Mission accomplished.
I don't want this to be a review of the package necessarily, though, and more about the games themselves, which is why I want to go ahead and mention that 4 of these games, Elevator Action, Alpine Ski, Chack'n Pop, and the Fairyland Story, are all available via Antstream Arcade, which is a streaming service available on PCs and the current Xbox series of consoles. While this service doesn't give much historical context either, they do offer a handful of interesting features like a leaderboard that's easier to access, and certain games have challenges which are little ROM tweaks where certain conditions have been changed, and you have to complete the game's mechanics in sometimes entirely different ways. In elevator action, for example, one of the challenges is that you're trapped in the elevator and can only move up and down, so you're tasked with killing as many dudes as possible before getting shot. It's harder than you think. If you liked things like NES Remix, you'll definitely get some enjoyment out of playing these classic games in different ways. Anyway, time for the official recommendations. This is where I tell you which of these 10 classics you should search for in your pile of downloaded games and consider trying. Elevator Action and Kicks are both great, but that's nostalgia talking. Chack'n Pop, Frontline, Wild Western, and Alpine Ski? Nope, you're fine continuing to ignore those. Set aside Space Seeker if you like tinkering with things, trying to figure them out, and feeling a sense of accomplishment once you do. That's a game I'll go back to once I finish this video. I'll also be going back to Halley's Comet, which is a fun shooter with cool music. The Fairyland Story is another one where I'm definitely interested in seeing more of what it has to offer. And anytime a friend wants to play a co-op beat 'em up, I'm pulling out the Ninjawarriors. So that's 4 to 6 titles worth checking out from this collection, which easily makes it worth the price I paid. If you're not interested in getting the whole collection, you should seek out the 4 I mentioned though. Just make a little folder in your RetroPie build or whatever and put them in there, or check out the individual downloads on your Switch or PS5. Then when you're in the mood to discover something new and neat, they'll be there for you. I'm glad I could help. I'm going to close this first episode by mentioning my newly launched Twitch channel, which is twitch.tv/ChuckDowling, which is me, that's my name. I'll be live streaming my initial reactions to all the games I use for future videos in this series, so if you're interested in my raw, unfiltered opinions as I see these games for the first time, come check out the streams. When these are in production, I'm usually on every night at 9 PM until I have enough footage for the next video in the series. I hope you come check it out. Thanks for watching this first installment. I really hope you found it useful, and I'll be back with more retro recommendations that are new, because it's the first time that okay, no, I'm not getting into the weeds with the explanation again. I'll see you next time.